Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have 5 novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. Hi, guys. Today you get to meet Dr. Scott Eveloff. Did I say that right?
You got it. Very good.
Okay, good. And he is an author, a physician, and an advocate. And his latest book is a supernatural thriller, medical thriller, Do Not Resuscitate. And today is publication day. So we're excited to be with you guys on publication day. Hey, Scott.
Hi there.
So could you show us the cover of your book? Very nice. I do want to ask you questions about that, especially
Sure.
the kind of eerie thing that's in the background there. I
Okay.
want to find out what that is. But I want to start. So you and I have quite a few things in common, which is always a surprise and a wonderful surprise to me. So the first thing we have in common is Kansas. I actually lived in Kansas for 3 years in Lindsborg, Kansas. A girl from the Bronx ended up in this little tiny town, Lindsborg, Kansas. Another thing that we have is a more serious thing that we have in common, that you are the father of a son who was born with the disability that we're going to hear about. And for 40 years, Bob and I, husband Bob and I, have been volunteers and donors to Easter Seals, whose his whole mission is helping people who are differently abled, and I served on the board as well. So let's start with your son. I want you, I would love for you to tell our audience about your son.
First, let me say that the world needs more people like you in terms of your advocacy for disability, and I appreciate that. And the other thing I want to add is you may have lived in Kansas and been from the Bronx. I lived in Kansas, but married a woman from Queens. So we do have that sort of further intersection. Um, at any rate, my son was born with congenital muscular dystrophy. Not a whole lot was known about it then. Not a whole lot was known about it now. It's much more rare than, say, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. Nonetheless, over time, he lived until age 24, and over time, his disease slowly progressed, unfortunately. But because of his joy of life, his compassion for others, and his overall steadfastness, he has set the bar high for me. And both I and my family have always tried to achieve uh, what he set out. And I've also tried to memorialize him and pay him tribute in my writing.
Yes, yes. I just looked at your website and the pictures of him are just joyous, joyful, joyful, handsome young man too. I'm
And
very
that's how he
joyful.
was. That's how he was.
Yeah. In one of the pictures, sounds like you have a story to tell. So there was a picture of your son. What's your son's name?
Andrew.
Andrew. So there's a picture of him with the cast of Law and Order SVU. You have to tell us how that happened.
Well, he had unfortunately just recovered from a severe episode of respiratory failure, and he had just had a tracheostomy placed and a feeding tube placed. And I wanted to do something to further distract him from his medical issues and just help him on his way to enjoying life. He loved Law and Order SVU, so I wanted to do something with that. Unfortunately, he was too old for the Make a Wish Foundation and all those other foundations that grant wishes to sick children. He was not a sick child. And there are no adult organizations for that. So I took it upon myself. I Googled uh, NBC and Universal, and I found all their officers, and then I just went down the list, cold calling them, and somehow one of the vice presidents actually answered his own phone. We talked. He heard me out. He said he'll get back to me, and a couple of days later, he did get back to me saying it's all set. You guys come on out. You'll be in for a taping. And I thought, fantastic. So what I didn't realize is how utterly compassionate and welcoming those big celebrities were. Andrew was treated like literally royalty by none other than Mariska Hargitay and all the cast members. It was such a high point, and I give the cast of that show so much credit. They made my son's last remaining years even more enjoyable than they would have been. We were they treated us so well even during the taping, and it was the high point. And so, unfortunately, he passed away a couple years after that, but he always had those memories with him, which bolstered him until the end. So it was just a tremendous experience.
Yeah, what a beautiful story. It's good it's always so encouraging to know there are still lots of good people in the world. Because sometimes
There
when
are,
watching the news, you can think that everybody is evil, but there are so many good people in the world. That's a beautiful, beautiful story. So,
yeah.
tell us about the book that's coming out today. Give us the premise, the setting. Just tell us a little bit about it.
It's a cross-genre medical and supernatural mystery thriller. I've been a physician for 30 years, many of those years spent in the intensive care unit dealing with literally life and death situations, literally day to day. So that initially got my mind thinking. And then many times I was on call. I got called into the hospital late at night. And honestly, I don't think there's anything creepier than wandering around empty hospital hallways in the middle of the night, sometimes hearing moans of agony coming from patient rooms in the middle of these otherwise deserted hallways. And then you go into the ICU where it becomes multiplied many times over. So that started the supernatural ball rolling, if you will. And then I just combined some of those experiences with my patients, with my own experiences and training, with the eerie atmosphere of a hospital, and came up with a story of life and death, both before death and after death. And that's what led to Do Not Resuscitate.
Wow. So show us again the book cover and tell us what does it represent, what are we looking at there?
Well, the ghostly figure behind is supposed to represent the lingering souls that inhabit every hospital after patients die. And if you remember from the movie Ghost, as a matter of fact, this book can best be described as Ghost meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Um, but in Ghost, they said that when someone dies violently, their soul never leaves, never passes on. Well, I don't know what you've experienced, but being on the giving end of many resuscitations, they are, excuse me, incredibly violent procedures. They don't mean to be, but between
Mm,
CPR and
mm,
pounding on the chest and inserting catheters and inserting needles, they're very violent. And many people die in the throes of such violent resuscitative measures. So I thought, boy, isn't that fertile ground for someone's soul never really being able to leave? And so the ominous image on my cover represents those souls that I believe still linger around hospitals. And then it's arising from a defibrillator, which is a machine, used to shock people. You've seen it on TV. Exactly. And so it combines both the medical aspect of resuscitation and the supernatural afterlife lingering of long dead souls to represent my story.
Wow. Okay. All right. So tell us about your protagonist. I assume that he's a doctor like you.
Not only is he a doctor like me, in many respects, he is me. He's freshly graduated from medical school, medical intern, so he's incredibly insecure and a bit bumbling. And unfortunately, for better or for worse, that describes my initiation into the world of medicine. So many of the mistakes he makes are patterned after my own experiences. But nonetheless, he is just starting out his medical training, and uh, many of his patients suddenly start to die gruesomely and unexpectedly. And initially, he thought there was some angel of death loose in the hospital, maybe an avenging nurse, maybe a conniving pharmaceutical company, like you hear in many medical mysteries. And then, with further investigation, however, he finds out that these deaths are not due to a human agency at all, but to a supernatural collection of lingering souls whose motivation is as disturbing as it is unbelievable. And I won't give away their
No, don't give it
motivation,
away.
but that's what he discovers as he investigates these deaths further.
Wow, that is very, very intriguing. So, as you reflect on your writing journey, you decided to do this and you got these ideas going. What's the most challenging part, and what was the most joyful part of writing this book?
The most joyful part is simply writing the book. You as a writer, I as a writer, all of us as writers, it becomes almost an addiction or almost an irresistible force. You have to, have an idea, you sit down, and in my case, because certain aspects of my world were a bit out of control between my profession and my son's illness, um, writing a story gave me control over another world. I could direct characters, I could direct outcomes, so it gave me a bit of control as well as a bit of therapy. So my most joyful moments were writing. Obstacles or unexpected issues came as I received rejection after rejection after rejection. It's never easy. You always tend to take it personally, but my way of thinking was many of these actually came with advice. So I used them as learning experiences. Every rejection, I'd feel pretty bad for a couple days. And then I'd incorporate what that agent or what that editor said, revise my book a little, go ahead and submit again. And it was sort of a work in progress and a learning in progress. So it was still a little difficult to overcome, but it all served me well in the end. Then finally, my most difficult challenge was just changing from author to promoter of my book. That was
Yes.
a totally different world for me, and I'm still learning. So those are my high points and challenges, I guess, that I've come across.
That's the rejection part of our life is so hard, but you were very fortunate because people liked what you wrote. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given you suggestions. You would have just gotten, sorry, we're not interested. And so we actually rate, rejection letters, we writers, like, oh, good rejections. Sounds like you had some good rejections. And yes, the
I did,
marketing,
yes,
the marketing is like, I know it's not what we were meant to do, but we
exactly.
must. We must,
That's
yes.
right.
So when you think about your tackling this book, and you had to, like all of us, these stories are just bubbling and they just come out of us. Was there a book or an author that impacted your work, that impacted your approach or how you wrote?
Actually, yes, I'm a big fan of Dean Koontz. But
Mm,
besides the fact that Dean Koontz writes sort of supernatural things. He injects his stories with humanity. Usually it's for a dog, but sometimes it's for relationships. But his books come with a healthy degree of humanity, and that's what I wanted to inject in my book. Not just make it a supernatural thriller, but I'm hoping that my message of dignity for the disabled, dignity for the elderly and the need for greater patient rights. I'm hoping those sub messages will come through because I wanted it to be more than just a medical supernatural mystery. So if I had to point to one author, it would be Dean Koontz because of both his supernatural imagination and his humanity. And then also I have to attribute some of it to Stephen King. I mean, what horror writer doesn't at least have a little bit of connection to Stephen King? So I guess both of those authors were my main backup as I wrote.
I love that that you lifted some important issues in the book as well. The dignity and made some very important parts of the story. I do that too in all my stories. I try to lift some aspect of social justice.
And I
And
think the
because
books for books for the disabled or relating to the disabled or the disadvantaged, there's just not as many out there as you would like. So even though the book isn't strictly meant for them, they are certainly included in the interested readership of my book, and I elevate emotional, cognitive, and physical disability through the characters in my book. I pay tribute to Andrew as he inspired certain of the characters, and I also bring out how patients perhaps aren't treated well and how they should be treated well. So it was a it should the more I wrote, the more I I liked the messages I was trying to get across, and I hope they do get across to readers.
sounds wonderful. Now you've made me want to read your book. I have to read your book. That's a little that's I'm adding it to my to be read list. So you've gotten me all interested, and you have our audience all interested. So can you tell everybody, besides you can buy his books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, in your independent store, you can borrow it from your library, all of those places. But is there also a way that they can be in touch with you?
Absolutely. Two ways, very simple. My website is scotteveloff.com. You'll see my backstory, my publications, how to order my books, and all my motivations. And then I'm always happy to receive emails. It's just scotteveloff@gmail.com. So either way, but just as I told my patients when I was practicing medicine, I'll tell hopefully all my readers I am very happy to communicate by email. You'll never overwhelm me or besiege me. So the more communication I have, the better. So those are the main two ways, and I'm very happy to communicate to people.
And guys, he makes house calls. Invite him to your book club. Invite him to an event so he can talk about his book and you can meet him in person. And when you do reach out, please say that you met him. What are you reading? What are you rating? Until next time, everybody, next week, right? See you then. Bye bye.
Thank you, Karen.